Hey, so I have not posted in here in a hot minute. So we moved locally, but we moved, started a new job, started roller derby, which has been life changing, but will absolutely commandeer your free time. And I also went on like a good 4 to 5 month long just reading slump. But I think I'm officially out of that. I finished a book recently that I kind of wanted to talk about here. It's Death in the Downline by Maria Abrams, and it caught my eye because it is a multi-level marketing themed murder mystery. Um, Quick history lesson. I remember kind of around the time this book was set, actually, when most of that like online content I think was still centered in the like r/anti-MLM subreddit. It seems like from there it kind of moved maybe more into like the YouTube uh, content sphere. I'm peripherally still aware of a few channels that seem to really thrive posting in that niche. One that I remember from YouTube, kind of when it hit like the mainstream, basically. And we got like the Dream podcast, and then we started getting like the LuLaRoe documentary, and yeah, there were a few other things mixed in there I can't name off the top of my head, but like it hit its stride. And then I don't really know when, but it certainly seems like coverage has just fallen off in general since then. I'm hoping maybe that's because participation in general has fallen off since then. I know it seems like MLM's made a little bit of or they had like a participation surge, maybe because of COVID, which, makes sense. But, at this point, after all the mainstream coverage, it's the fact that, like, you or someone you know, for like everyone, has been involved in one at some point by now. So, like, most people aren't unaware of them and how they work anymore. Anyway, this is very rambly, but like all that to say, I did think the timing of this book was a little interesting. I did read a or review briefly a book on here like a couple years ago that was a multi-level marketing like psychological thriller, which that genre also seems like it's maybe fallen off a little since then too, which is just interesting to think about. But it was a little bit of like an info dump book, but I thought it was kind of weird and niche and fun, and overall, I thought it was neat that someone wrote that. It was the first thing I'd seen like it, and I was excited to see this as well. I'll get into some of what I think could have been done differently with it. I did think it was interesting that both of these books have to be from the perspective of someone who's like very much set up as like, oh, I would never be involved in that, and then they end up being involved in that. But you you need more context first. So, to take a step back, the book centers around I forgot her name already. But she's like 30-year-old, 29-year-old who moved to the big city like New York and just got canned from BuzzFeed, I think, and has to move back in with her dad. Um, Drew, her name is Drew. Just bear with me because it's been like 2 or 3 weeks since I finished this. I could not check it back out because there's people in line at the library. But so she has to move back in with her dad and I thought it was interesting that this was framed as like the middle of nowhere, or I guess at least extremely suburban. But back to New Jersey, that was another thing I kind of was confused about as the book went on. A lot of the like MLM, um, I don't know, like the MLM people were portrayed as like small town southern. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I live on the East Coast. Like, I know more people from New Jersey than before I moved to Maryland for obvious reasons. But while small or like suburban towns across the country probably have quite a bit in common, this is not it just doesn't match the impression I have of Jersey so far, at least not based off the people I know from there. Um, but I digress. So she moves back. She's trying to figure out, what to do next with her life. She's really upset about being back in her hometown. And she also like just split with her boyfriend, which is there's actually like a really dramatic like backstory to it, but we spend very little time on it, which is a little odd. Um, that'll be a theme. I think there was a lot in this book that didn't get fleshed out. So she's going like to the grocery store in her hometown, and naturally, in a small town grocery store, you run into people you don't want to talk to like almost immediately. Especially if you have like if your life's not going great and you don't want to explain that. Um, and the person she runs into is like her high school ex best friend. Um, and her now like two kids that she's had in the interim since they were friends to now. And as the book goes on, also, I'm just gonna say spoilers here because I feel they're necessary. And I'm not like super recommending this book anyway. But it's just strange because in this moment, it definitely frames them as two like fundamentally pretty different people. Um, and that happens. There are people that you spent time with at one phase in your life that maybe you've genuinely grown into different people, right? Um, so it's set up like that, and she ends up having to talk to her, and Stephanie's the friend. She's very stereotypically now like spray tan, bleach blonde, acrylics, like um, very Instagram like Republican core, we'll say. I think that paints the picture. Um, and so anyway, Drew is like, and naturally, from like the MLM setup, Stephanie's like, so good to see you, and is immediately like trying to rope her into her downline, right? At this point in the book, Drew hasn't picked up on that. I forget exactly what all went through like her internal monologue, but she ends up meeting Stephanie for coffee, and they have a very like ten- tentative makeup, right? And she's like, oh, well, maybe it'll be great to have this friend back in my life, especially while I'm at such a rocky point. And and then she finds out, like, she figures out it's an MLM pitch, right? And her all upset again. There's a little like back and forth drama. All this is part of why the murder doesn't happen to like the halfway point of the book. But so they end up on okay terms again, like maybe going forward, and then Drew's dad loses her job um, at the pharmaceutical factory. And just a quick aside, this also goes into how she keeps describing how the town is like hollowing out and there's really bad opioid problems. I think, did her dad actually work at an opioid factory? Because it'd be a little on the nose. Um, I'll look back at that. But, ah, I just thought the book dipped into like a little too much, like trying to tackle the opioid crisis, like in the side margins, and just her having like terrible life event after terrible life event. but the point of this in the plot is that it means her dad has to sell off their childhood home that her mom like passed away from cancer in and everything. Very traumatic. Um, and he's moving into like a tiny studio apartment, so she has to find a place to live ASAP. And conveniently, Stephanie, who somehow is like making bank selling skin cream. Luminous, by the way. I don't think I ever said that. Not to be confused with Lumen from Severance. Um, she conveniently has an extra room above their garage. And she's like, yeah, you can stay here rent free. I just, if you're here, like, join my downline, basically. And so I thought this was a little bit contrived because again, there's this. It seems in the fiction that goes for this MLM crossover, you have to have like the extreme skeptic protagonist who ends up getting like forced into participating somehow. Um, so that's how they accomplish it, and this is where that part of the story takes off, where she's like starting to do the Facebook posts and things she doesn't want to do, but she's also in the back of her head like, well, what's the off chance like this does succeed and maybe it works out? Like I really need the money right now. Um, and another aside, one thing I was gonna really hammer in this is how like egregious and absurd and tone deaf the example posts sprinkled throughout the book are. Because it'll be like, someone posting about their cousin who died and talking about like how glad the person is they can go to the funeral and then work on the car ride back, and it'll be like 20% off skincare, like hashtag rip Macy. Um, cause like, yeah, yikes. But actually, at the back of the book, there's a little blurb where she's talking about the writing process, and she says she expected people to critique that, but she's like, I promise. These are almost all lifted from like real posts I found while I was researching the book, and I believe that. I do. Um, yeah, like reality is more cringe than fiction sometimes, right? But anyway, so we go through this point. Drew is starting to notice her best friend's like marriage is strange, is like strained. And she's been told like under no circumstances can she go in the locked garage below the room she's staying in. And this this actually sets up like a point of intrigue, right? Like a point of tension in the story. And you keep hearing like strange noises from down there and everything. Let's set that aside. She's starting to talk to some of Stephanie's like MLM friends with another one of their like high school friends thrown in the mix who is like would never do this type girl. But there she is. Um and of course they have to go on a conference cuz if you're not familiar, a lot of these multi-level marketing companies throw these big conferences where you have to pay your own way to go there, and they promise that they're going to turn you into like a superstar seller, yada yada yada. Um, there's Dima, and this part of the book is pretty info dumpy about kind of like the MLM stuff. Um, like again, honestly, a lot of the book up to this point has been. And I do think it kind of falls in a weird space, right? Because on the one hand, if you're someone who hasn't been like plugged into this discourse for like 7 years at this point, yeah, like a lot of this probably wouldn't make very much sense. But on the other hand, I'm assuming a smooth like 80 to 90% of the readership for this book is going to be people who have been plugged into this discourse for a long time. So I don't really, it's like, I don't know where the middle ground is because for us, it's like the 85th time we're getting the spiel on a lot of this, and it it makes it like a little bit of a drag. But on the other hand, if it really is your entry point, um, most of that probably would be necessary. So I'll reserve judgment, I guess. It's just kind of a weird, it's a hard line to straddle, I guess. Um, but yeah, so the conference, very cheesy corporate stuff happening. But not like actual corporate, like the motivational speaker beat, that kind of jazz. Lots of too much drinking in the like happening, which to be fair is a good setup for a homicide, I guess, or accidental death. It's not clear what happens at that point. And this is the part of the book that reminded me a lot of another book I'll bring back up later called Hey Hun, and it was actually like autobiographical, and I have weird feelings about that book too, even though it's nonfiction. Um, yeah, so like boom bop bam, this is where we get the first body. Um, I kind of forget what happens like immediately after that, but they all go home. um, People's reactions are weird to it. Um, anyway, Drew, who's traumatized again now and not doing very well with the business, because of course she's not, starts getting suspicious of more things and starts noticing that a lot of the women selling these products are like not healthy, and a lot of them are mysteriously dying, and it's being blamed on like opioid abuse, even though it seems pretty obvious to her that most of these women like probably were not abusing any kind of substance. Also, she's starting to have like reactions to the skin cream and the supplements and all these other products. So this is the part where she starts snooping around and like putting her journalism degree to work, I guess, although it mostly seems to be in the form of like trying to pass off an old BuzzFeed press pass as legit. But in the course of her, turning stones over for this, trying to figure out who killed her new friend in the MLM stuff, in Luminous, sorry, um, she discovers that Stephanie and the girl who was killed, I think her name was Mackenzie, maybe, um, were both actually on this deal from the woman in their upline, where they basically paid them to pretend that they were successful in the business, but it, like to the point of renting, I guess, I don't know if they were exactly McMansions, but like nice houses, renting nice houses, and um, getting them the MLM car and all this other stuff, paying to send their kids to a boarding school or like private school, I guess, not boarding school. But all of that with the catch of an NDA, and of course, ultimately, um, being responsible for all the debt that they're getting payments made on through Luminous. And that was an interesting extension of the concept of like the car that you can earn, but you have to take the lease out yourself. And then if you quit meeting the targets where they'll send you a stipend for it, then it's just like you're stuck. But I did think it was maybe a bit of a reach. I don't know, maybe you could argue they do that for like one person. I mean, it's really common, I feel like, for companies to pay influencers and things. Paying like certain high profile people to advertise, to pretend that they're doing great with a service or a product or whatever that they don't touch in real life. But doing that for a couple women in at least what's portrayed as like a super random Jersey suburb, like doesn't really stack up, I would think. Um, and as you keep going, she's figuring out that like the Mackenzie's death is probably related to her wanting to run to a reporter and squeal about it because both of the women are like they're not feeling like they can handle the obligations of their situation, and their spouses are like unaware of it too, which is kind of like wild. This book just left a lot of little plot holes. That if you're someone who enjoys like a very well crafted mystery aspect of the story, it gets a little frustrating. Um, so she figures that out. She and Stephanie have a real heart to heart about it. Actually, I might be explaining some stuff slightly out of order, but another thing that happens in this portion of the book, the other girl she knew from high school that she was like, "What are you doing here? You were, alternative or whatever. What are you doing this for?" And they've bleached her hair and like beige washed her basically. She is getting really sick, like her hair's falling out. She shows up to a pool party with the woman who orchestrated, well, not just woman, like a married couple that orchestrated the fake like lifestyle deal with the other two women. And the dish on these two is their inner circle, like basically the very top of the pyramid. I don't know if they founded it, but they're like a step below. And they also run like an extremely performative like missionary service. They're like televangelist type, like very scammy, that vibe. So the like previously alt girl who's losing her hair and getting really sick shows up and like assaults her basically. Um, things spiral a bit more from there. When like someone outs the tele, they're not actually televangelists, but like those two for their missionary organization actually being a front to take people to like Guatemala for bypass surgery, like gastric bypass surgery. And this was just like, because if you know, you know, it's very ripped from like the Lula Road documentary. Like that was, I don't know if it was that specific surgery, but they were funneling women high up in the company, like heavily peer pressuring them to get discount weight loss surgery in Mexico. So like that comes out anyway. Drew keeps digging. She's getting close to figuring out what's up with these products that's like killing the women and maybe why Mackenzie was uh like pushed off the balcony. I don't think I ever mentioned that. Yeah, she fell off a balcony or, fell with some help at their conference hotel. And in the middle of this, the scammy preacher MLM lady gets shot. Um, long story short, for a while, actually, this was a long story long, but Drew had started suspecting Stephanie for a while, and that put their friendship like back on the rocks. But then they figure out it was scammy preacher woman's husband who sucks and was also trying to start like a cleaning product MLM on the side, which was really annoying. He shot his wife because she felt guilty and was like about to fess up about the products being poisonous and having killed Mackenzie because she pushed Mackenzie off the balcony for wanting to go to a reporter about the fake lifestyle arrangement. So yeah, the end of it felt kind of out of left field for me. Like, other than just trying to vibe out, like, who has the worst personality here. I didn't think there was much of a way for you to put that together ahead of time. When in the end, you also find out that the supplements were apparently laced with like radium and tapeworm eggs. And that was like how they were working and why they were also killing women. And that just felt a little like shark jumpy to me. Um, I would have believed like maybe they changed to a cheaper supplier and refused to acknowledge like really bad lead contamination or something. These are, I mean, bad, cheap products from people who don't care do kill people in real life. Like, this happens all the time. But, like, radium and tapeworm eggs. It's a little ham fisted, I don't know. So, end of the book. I forget if Drew gets like a journalism job back. Oh, no, 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 no. I do remember what she did because this is something that reminded me of the Hey Hun book. She and Stephanie like write books about their experience together, and that like, you know, restarts her career in journalism, which I didn't really like that as an ending. Oh yeah, and it's also considered like a true crime book, and she always wanted to write a true crime book. But all right, one thought at a time. I did think her and Stephanie's like friend reunion was like nice, but maybe a little confusing. Just because at the beginning they're set up as like such completely polar like people, honestly, like just valuing completely different things. Stephanie's presented as extremely materialistic. I understand a lot of that is supposed to be part of the facade she felt like she had to take on. Because I don't think I mentioned, but her family was in like a really bad financial position when this woman came to her and like got her involved in the MLM, right? But you find out at some point the reason they quit talking is because Stephanie dropped out of college, like their freshman year, to marry her high school sweetheart, who Drew apparently also knew and like didn't particularly dislike, that I can recall. And again, that just felt a little contrived to me because it was written basically as, she said that over the phone and they just basically stopped talking after that because Drew was so upset with her. I don't know. I don't know if I have trouble buying that the conflict would play out exactly like that, especially if, she's arguing that it's someone she cared so much about that she hated to see her, like, give up on her education. I don't know why exactly they would need to. So I don't even understand why she would need to drop out, like, for them to be together. It just didn't make sense to me. But so you have them painted as going in these completely opposite directions, like New York city girl journalist, like small town, um, boss babe mom. But then that all just kind of fades in the back. I guess you're supposed to believe Stephanie never really changed from who she was when they were friends before, but it was just, again, it just didn't feel very fleshed out to me. But yeah, so they worked together on this true crime, like, journalistic book that revives Drew's career. And what that got me thinking about is the autobiography I mentioned a bit earlier, Hey Hun, because I felt kind of icky about that book. It was written by a woman who was really high up in, I don't remember if she even says which one it was in the book or not, but one of them. Um like one of the few who actually made, like six figures, I think, off the business, or off the grift, I should say, because she was only getting that money by taking advantage of the people in her downline that she admits like mostly failed and mostly did lose money. Um and she only jumped ship and changed her tune about all this. She admits in the book like when she could tell that the operation as a whole was failing. And she does another large part of the book is about her sobriety journey, for like lack of a more succinct term, I guess. I hate calling everything a journey, but like it fits here. And that does harken back to like the excessive wine consumption and like the MLM culture. At least if you're not in like a particularly, um, I guess, Mormon portion of it or evangelical portion of it, does seem problematic. But yeah, so this girl writes her autobiography, and I did think some of what she recounted was interesting, but I just felt very conflicted at the end of it because she is, she's jumped ship from the MLM side, and now she's making money off being anti-MLM now that that's like more convenient. I mean, I can't really look at her true intentions for sure, right? And I certainly prefer this to her continuing to scam people in some other way, but it just maybe feels like it could be a bit disingenuous, I guess. Um, there was also this was YouTube drama, I remember. A girl named like Kimberlea who ran an anti-MLM channel for a long time. And then once she had accrued a pretty strong following, like jumped ship and joined an MLM. So I don't know. It's just it sucks to be skeptical of a lot of people's true thoughts and beliefs because so many people just kind of follow whoever's willing to pay them at the moment, or whatever's garnering a better media following at the time. Yeah, so it was like even though Drew was never really fully on board, she did not make money in the MLM. She was like forced into participating or whatever. She cashing in. She's cashing in on like something that killed a bunch of people, and I don't know. I don't know. I'm just not sure it was exactly the like stellar like best outcome that it was framed as in the book. Um, so moving on from that very uh poorly recounted summary, I did kind of go back. One of the first things I always, or well, it wasn't the first thing in this case. After like a 3 week delay, one of the first things I did was skim through Goodreads like 1 and 2 star reviews, or sorry, Storygraph. I don't say Goodreads here. Um, Skim through like 1 or 2 star online reviews because that's where you can go to see people who didn't like the book. And I even do this for books that I really loved because a lot of times they point out things that just didn't occur to me. And I feel like over time it has made me a more thoughtful and analytical reader. But I did see a lot of the same impressions I got echoed in these reviews, and that was validating. Um, Basically, people feeling like the MLM murder mystery idea came first, and the mystery was just kind of cobbled together as an afterthought to like, just to serve as like a scaffolding for everything else. Just for like more of the expose portion of it, I guess. And yeah, like as a big mystery fan, that was a letdown. Um, I mean, it wasn't terrible. I've certainly read worse. There are really bad mystery plots published by like major publishers every day. So like it wasn't that bad. I'm still giving this like 3 stars. But yeah, it did feel like an afterthought. I mentioned another person in there did mention it felt a little outdated. It was set in like 2018, so more of the like hey hun heyday where you were getting hit up on Facebook and everything like constantly. Although I will say I'm pretty sure I'm like 99% sure it was an Amway pitch in PetSmart like a year or two ago, so they're still out there. Yeah, I don't know, it was just recent enough, and to be fair, like probably more accurately set, that it just felt a little odd to read about now. Like just a little off. Um, but on the other hand, I think that's much better than what irritates me more most of the time now, which is people rushing a project to get it out while they think the topic is like hot. Um, That's what I really didn't like about the Can't Spell Treason Without T book, is it seemed like a really good idea. It also seemed like it was in like a good writer too. I don't think that author is a bad writer. The book just felt like it was keyboard vomited and like not edited and rushed to publish before people on TikTok or whatever like move on to a new micro trend. Um, so that's like a minor complaint. It does feel like it was published maybe a little after when it would have been the most culturally relevant, but I still think that's a much better decision than maybe the alternative. Okay, I did actually just look at some of the notes I took while I was reading the book, and they're very helpful. So I forgot the whole bit about. In the end, it's explained that the founder of the company started it because she lost so much weight during chemotherapy, and she's like a cancer survivor. It's like part of her shtick, right? Um, Not to reduce that to being a shtick, but that's like what she uses it as. And so that's why there were radium in the supplements, which I don't think that's how chemotherapy works either. Yeah, so some of this was it got a little hammy. It got a little reachy. And it was that and the fact that at one point the way Drew figures out the pills are like actually poisonous is she orders like one of those random online blood tests that claim they can detect like, 100 different things. So I guess just to complain that some of the things thrown into the book were like not well researched. Um, because I guess it just bugged me that on the one hand you're writing kind of a fictional but real life inspired expose of this industry and of like health and wellness scams, but on the other hand you're promoting without any context the use of a lot of these online services that like for $300 will tell you why you feel bad all the time. And a lot of them just kind of make stuff up, right? They're like, oh yeah, your this antigen is like through the roof, but there's no way to validate. Um, like a lot of, and I'm sure maybe there's a reputable one out there, but most of these don't really have results that you can verify. And the point is that if you have concerns about your health like this, you need to be pushing to go through like a licensed medical practitioner, right? So that just, yeah, like that was really frustrating to me. It's like using one scam to expose another. That that's pretty much it. It's kind of an abrupt end, but it's you know I end up recalling like most of the book while I'm talking about it. So sorry, it was very scattered. But yeah, that's that. I am really excited about my current read, which is the fourth grilled cheese mystery book that I finally saw came out like last week. It's Bree Careful What You Bree Careful What You Wish For by Linda Riley. I'm only like a chapter in so far, but I'm happy it's back. I was worried it wasn't continuing just because it seems like it's been a little while since the last one came out. I have to say I think that's the intersection of like no, how do you say it? It's my most favorite like conventional cozy mystery series. Where there's no like strange modern twist on it. It's just really good. It's really wholesome. And the covers are always really, really cute, which doesn't hurt. Excited about that, and also in like cozy mystery games on the side. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a mystery game, but I finally finished playing through Thirsty Suitors, which is like a skating slash cooking slash like dating sim. It's just a really offbeat, like kind of chaotic game, but I thought the story and the artwork in it was like 10/10. Had a really good time playing through that. Um, but yeah, that's that, I guess. Just big chillin'. Um, yeah, bye.